All right, we are reading The Snow Queen by Hans Christian Andersen, and we are getting to part 4. Now you remember the story is about Kay and Gerda, who are two little friends, and Kay has gone away with the Snow Queen, and now little Gerda is trying to find him. She got sidetracked with a bunch of talking flowers, but now she's on her way again. So here we are. Part 4, The Prince and the Princess. Gerda was again obliged to stop and rest. While she was doing so, a large raven suddenly hopped upon the snow in front of her, saying, "Caw, caw, good day, good day." He had sat for some time on the withered branch of a tree just opposite, eyeing the little maiden and wagging his head, and now he came forward to make her acquaintance, and to ask her where she was going, all alone. The word alone Gerda understood only too well. She felt how sad a meaning it had. She told the raven the history of her life and fortunes, and asked if he had seen Kay. And the raven nodded his head, half doubtfully, and said, "That is possible, possible." "Do you think so?" exclaimed the little girl, and she kissed the raven so vehemently that it is a wonder she didn't squeeze him to death. calm down," said the raven. "I think I know. I think it may be little Kay, but he has certainly forsaken you for the princess." "Does he live with a princess?" asked Gerda. "Listen to me," said the raven, "but it is so difficult to speak your language. Do you understand Ravenish? If so, I can tell you much better." "No, I have never learned Ravenish," said Gerda. "But my grandmother knew it, and Pie language too. Oh, how I wish I had learned it." "Never mind," said the raven. "I will tell you my story as best as I can, though it's bound to be bad." And he told her all that he knew. In the kingdom where we are now, there dwells a princess, a most uncommonly clever princess. She has read all the newspapers in the world, and forgotten them again, so clever is she. It is not long since she ascended the throne, which I have heard is not quite so agreeable a situation as one would fancy. And straight afterwards she began to sing a new song, which went like this: "Why should I not marry?" "There is some sense in this song," said she, and she determined she would marry, but at the same time declared that the man of her choice must be able to answer sensibly whenever people spoke to him, and must be good for something else besides merely looking grand and stately. The ladies of the court were then all summoned together in order to be informed of her intentions, and they were all highly delighted. One exclaimed, "That is just what I had hoped for," and another said that she had lately been thinking of the very same thing. "Believe me," continued the raven, "every word I say is true, for I have a tame beloved who hops at pleasure about the palace, and she has told me all this." Of course, the beloved was also a raven, for birds of a feather flock together. Proclamations adorned with borders of hearts were issued immediately. These, having listed the princess's titles at some length, announced that every well-favored youth was free to go to the palace and converse with the princess, and the one who talked as though he felt himself at home there would be the one the princess would choose for a husband. "Yes, indeed," continued the raven, "you can take it from me. All this is true as I am standing here. People flocked to the palace. There was terrible pushing and shoving in the crowds outside, but it was all of no use. Either the first or the second day, the young men could speak well enough while they were outside the palace gates, but when they went in and saw the royal guard in silver uniform, and the lackeys on the staircase in gold, and the spacious saloon all lit up, they were quite tongue-tied. They stood before the throne where the princess sat, and when she spoke to them, they could only repeat the last words she had uttered. which of course was not particularly interesting for her to hear over and over again. It was just as though they had been struck dumb the moment they entered the palace, for as soon as they got out they could talk fast enough. There was quite a procession of young men, constantly moving from the gates of the town to the gates of the palace. I was there and saw it with my own eyes, said the Raven. They grew hungry and thirsty while waiting at the palace, but no one could get even so much as a glass of water. To be sure, some of them, wiser than the rest, had brought with them slices of bread and butter, but none would give any to his neighbor. For he thought to himself, "Let him look hungry, and then the princess will be sure not to choose him." "But Kay, little Kay, when did he come?" asked Gerda. "Was he among the crowd?" "Wait a moment, I'm just coming to him. On the third day arrived a youth with neither horse nor carriage. Gaily he marched up to the palace. His eyes sparkled like yours. He had long, beautiful hair, but was very meanly clad." "That was Kay!" exclaimed Gerda. "Oh, then I have found him!" And she clapped her hands with delight. I've got a picture here. These are all the little boys lining up to talk to the princess. "He carried a knapsack on his back," said the Raven. "No, not a knapsack," said Gerda. "A sledge, for he had a sledge with him when he left home." "It is possible," rejoined the Raven. "I did not look very closely. But this I heard from my beloved, that when he entered the palace gates and saw the royal guards in silver and the lackeys in gold on the staircase, he did not seem in the least confused, but nodded pleasantly and said to them, 'It must be very tedious standing out there. I prefer going in.' The halls glistened with lights. Cabinet councillors and excellencies were walking about barefoot and carrying golden keys. It was just the place to make a man solemn and silent. The youth's boots creaked horribly, yet he was not at all afraid." "That was most certainly Kay," said Gerda. "I knew he had new boots. I have heard them creak in my grandmother's house." "Indeed they did creak," said the Raven, but merrily went he up to the princess, who was sitting upon a pearl as large as a spinning wheel, while all the ladies of the court, the maids of honor, and the handmaidens, ranged in order, stood on one side, and all the gentlemen in waiting, with their gentlemen, and their gentlemen's gentlemen, who also kept pages, stood ranged in order on their side, and the nearer they were to the door, the prouder they looked. The gentleman's gentleman's page, who always wears slippers, one dare hardly look at, so proudly he stands at the door." "That must be dreadful," said little Gerda. "And has Kay really won the princess?" "Had I not been a raven, I should have won her myself, betrothed or not. The young man spoke as well as I speak when I am talking in Ravenish, but I have heard from my tame beloved. He was handsome and lively. He did not come to woo her, he said. He had only come to hear the wisdom of the princess, and he liked her very much, and she liked him in return." "Yes, to be sure that was Kay," said Gerda. "He was so clever, he could do calculations in his head, even fractions. Oh, will you not take me to the palace?" "Ah, that is easily said," replied the Raven. "But how is it to be done?" "I will talk it over with my tame beloved. She will advise us what to do, for I must tell you that such a little girl as you will never gain permission to enter publicly." "Yes, I shall," cried Gerda. When Kay knows that I am here, he will immediately come out and fetch me." "Wait for me at the trellis yonder," said Raven. He wagged his head and flew away. The Raven did not return till late in the evening. "Caw, caw," he said. "My tame beloved greets you kindly, and sends you a piece of bread, which she took from the kitchen. There is plenty of bread there, and you must certainly be hungry. It is not possible for you to enter the palace, for you have bare feet. The royal guard in silver uniform, and the lackeys in gold, would never permit it. But do not weep, you shall go there. My beloved knows a little back staircase leading to the sleeping apartments, and she knows also where to find the key." And so they went into the garden, down the grand avenue, where the leaves dropped on them as they passed along, because remember, it's autumn. And when the lights in the palace, one by one, had all been extinguished, the raven took Gerda to the back door, which stood half open. Oh, how Gerda's heart beat with fear and expectation! It was just as though she was about to do something wrong, although she only wanted to know whether Kay was really there. Yes, it must be he. She remembered so well his bright eyes and long hair. She would see if his smile were the same as it used to be when they sat together under the rose trees. He would be so glad to see her, to hear how she had come for his sake, how all at home mourned his absence. Her heart trembled with fear and joy. They went up the staircase. A small lamp placed on a cabinet gave a gleaming light. On the floor stood the tame raven, turning her head from side to side. She looked at Gerda, who made her curtsy as her grandmother had taught her. "My betrothed has told me much about you, my good young maiden," said the tame raven. "Your adventures, too, are extremely interesting. If you will take the lamp, I will show you the way. We are going straight on. We shall not meet anyone now." "It seems to me as if someone were behind us," said Gerda. And in fact there was a rushing sound as of something passing. Strange-looking shadows flitted rapidly along the walls. Horses with long slender legs and fluttering manes, huntsmen, knights, and ladies. "These are only dreams," said the raven. "They come to amuse the great personages here at night. You will have a better opportunity of looking at them when you are in bed. I hope that when you arrive at honors and dignitaries, you will show a grateful heart." Picture here is Gerda holding the lamp and looking at the little boy who might be Kay. "Do not talk of that," said the wood raven. Now they entered the first saloon. Its walls were covered with rose-colored satin, embroidered with gold flowers. The dreams rustled past them, but with such rapidity that Gerda could not see them. The apartments through which they passed vied with each other in its splendor, and at last they reached the bedchamber. In the center of this room stood a pillar of gold, resembling the trunk of a large palm tree, whose leaves of glass, precious glass, formed the ceiling. Hanging low from the tree on two thick golden stems were two beds in the form of lilies. One was white, and here the princess lay. The other was red, and here Gerda expected to find her playfellow Kay. She bent aside one of the red leaves and saw a brown neck. Oh, it must be Kay. She called him by his name, held the lamp close to him. The dreams rushed by again, and he awoke, turned his head, and behold, it was not Kay. See? The prince woke up, but it wasn't Kay. The prince resembled him only about the throat, but he was young and handsome. The princess looked out from the white lily petals and asked what was the matter. Then little Gerda wept and told her whole story and what the ravens had done for her. "Poor child," said the prince and princess, and they praised the ravens and said they were not at all angry with them. Such liberties must never be taken again in their palace, but this time they shall be rewarded. "Would you like to fly away free to the woods?" asked the princess, addressing the ravens. "Or to be appointed court ravens, with the prerequisites belonging to the kitchen, such as crumbs and leavings?" And both the ravens bowed low and chose the appointment at court, for they thought of old age, and said it would be so comfortable to be well provided for in their declining years. Then the princess arose and made Gerda sleep in his bed. The prince rose, and she folded her little hands, thinking, "How kind both men and animals are to me." She closed her eyes and slept soundly and sweetly, and all the dreams flitted about her. They looked like angels from heaven, and seemed to be drawing a sledge on which Kay sat, nodding to her. But this was only fancy, for as soon as she awoke, all the beautiful visions had vanished. The next day she was dressed from head to foot in silk and velvet. She was invited to stay at the palace and enjoy all sorts of diversions, but she begged only for a little carriage and a horse, and a pair of little boots. All she desired was to go on again into the wide world to sleep Kay. Here she is in her nice new clothes made of silk and velvet. And they gave her the boots and a muff besides. How prettily she was dressed! As soon as she was ready, there drove up to the door a new carriage of pure gold, with the arms of the prince and princess glittering upon it like a star. The coachman, footmen, and outriders all wearing gold crowns. The prince and princess themselves helped her into the carriage and wished her success. The wood raven, who was now married, accompanied her the first 3 miles. He sat by her side, for riding backwards was a thing he could not bear. The other raven stood at the door flapping her wings. She did not go with them on account of a headache. This had come on since she had received her appointment, and was the result of eating too much. The carriage was well provided with sugar plums, fruit, and gingerbread nuts. "Farewell, farewell," cried the prince and princess. Little Gerda wept, and the raven wept out of sympathy. But his farewell was a far sorer trial. He flew up to the branch of a tree and flapped his wings at the carriage till it was out of sight. I'm going to stop there.